At the age of 10, my entire family was slaughtered to eliminate any future threats. The killers left no stone unturned, sparing no one. Boys in hiding were found one by one and killed. Eggs were shaken to break their yolks. Earthworms were split lengthwise, and even ant nests were flooded with boiling water. In the end, they discovered me, a pretty little girl, through the crevices of the rockery. I watched as my 4 older brothers were found one by the masked killers and dragged into the courtyard. The leader of the men in black, with a twisted sense of humor, offered them a choice, a piece of candy or a dagger. My eldest brother, trembling, chose the dagger. The man in black said coldly, "This child has a killer's heart. He must not be spared." Before the words faded, my eldest brother's head had already fallen to the ground. My second brother, his face pale, chose the candy. The man in black said coldly, "This child is too cunning. He must not be spared." In the darkness of the night, a flash of silver light, and my second brother clutched his throat, gurgling as he fell. Third brother hesitated, then simply chose both options. The man in black said coldly, "This boy's greed runs deep. He must not be spared." Third brother died as well. Fourth brother chose neither option. The man in black said coldly, "This boy is full of defiance. He must not be spared." Fourth brother faced death, unflinchingly, cursing at the man in black. "You scoundrel, if you don't kill me today, I swear I'll tear you to pieces someday." The man in black clapped his hands and laughed. "Such ambition. In honor of you being Lord Lu's last descendant, I don't mind giving you a chance for revenge. Boy, next time we meet, I will kill you." With those words, he turned and left with his men, leaving fourth brother stunned. Fourth brother was utterly incredulous, nearly weeping with joy when he realized he had truly escaped death. Suddenly, the man in black turned back, his eyes filled with a malicious grin of toying with prey. "Boy, we meet again." Fourth brother's expression of tearful joy after surviving the disaster froze on his face. He glanced toward my hiding spot, suddenly leaped up, and rushed toward the door. Unfortunately, after only a few steps of escape, a long sword pierced through his back, nailing him firmly to the door. Hiding in the small cave of the rockery, I tightly covered my mouth, tears streaming down my face, but not daring to make a sound. I watched as the man in black pulled the sword from fourth brother's body, wiped the blood from the blade on his fallen corpse, and issued an order in a weary tone. "They're all dead. Let's go." The group of assassins retreated as silently as they had arrived, and the entire courtyard instantly fell into dead silence. Only then did I dare to release my hand and take deep, forceful breaths. I wanted to go out and see if anyone in the family had survived, to go out and bury my parents and brothers. But remembering the mocking look in the man in black's eyes when he toyed with my brothers earlier, an inexplicable sense of danger rose from the depths of my heart, preventing me from going out. Not long after, faint footsteps sounded again in the courtyard. The masked assassins had returned, seeing the courtyard still maintain the tragic scene from when they left. One of the assassins said to the man in black, "Master, perhaps you guessed wrong." The man in black kicked fourth brother's corpse. "Impossible. That child clearly wanted to lure us away just now. There must still be someone hiding here. So they were just pretending to leave earlier. They were trying to trick me." The man in black's sharp gaze swept across the courtyard, and suddenly he strode toward the rockery. My heart began to pound wildly. I could only desperately curl up my body in the rockery's limited space, yet inevitably met the malicious eyes above the man in black's face covering through the stone crevices. He laughed. "You hid better than your brothers." When I was dragged out from the rockery and forced to kneel before the man in black with my shoulders pressed down, I finally saw the full extent of the courtyard's devastation. Under the pale moonlight, my father hung dead from my mother's favorite phoenix tree. My mother lay on her back in the nearby octagonal pavilion, her clothes torn, her lower body a bloody mess, her dead eyes staring toward my father with unseeing gaze. The heads of my nanny and the butler were placed on the swings, swaying slowly up and down in the cold wind as the severed necks dripped blood onto the grass. Not a single servant in the household was left alive. Even the big yellow dog that had grown up with me was gutted. I knew I couldn't escape either, so I just glared fiercely at the man in black. The mix of blood and ambergris from him making me nauseous. But he didn't kill me, nor did he force me to choose between candy and a dagger like he had toyed with my 4 brothers, because I was just a little girl. For many years after, I often recalled the strange look in the man in black's eyes, scornful, amused, and malicious, as if he saw me as a toy to be played with at will. He stopped his subordinate who intended to eliminate me, saying meaningfully, "A little girl can't stir up much trouble. Keeping her alive will be more amusing than killing her." The man in black was right to look down on me. A helpless little girl had no means for revenge, and even surviving in this world was an immense challenge. From the day my family met with disaster, the world has been relentlessly showing me its malice. The authorities in Jingzhou Prefecture hastily dismissed my family's massacre as the work of bandits. I overheard the prefect talking with his advisor. Lord Liu offended someone he shouldn't have. A mere imperial censor trying to smash a stone with an egg. That's why he ended up like this. Now that all the men in the Liu family are dead, what use is a pretty little girl left behind? So, the authorities couldn't be trusted. Not a single relative from the Liu clan stepped forward to seek justice for my family. Instead, they all jumped at the chance to seize our property. Because I was a girl, by law, I couldn't inherit the family estate and didn't even have the right to smash the funeral bowl at my father's burial. They even brazenly discussed selling me off, right in front of my family's spirit altar. One aunt from a collateral branch couldn't bear it. She's just a little girl, and such a pretty one at that. Raise her for a few years and marry her off. You could get a hefty bride price. Why be so ruthless? Her husband slapped her across the face. What do you know? Her family offended someone powerful. Keeping her would only bring disaster upon us. So even kin couldn't be trusted. On the day I was tied up and taken aboard the trafficker's boat, I secretly poisoned the family well with rat poison. The traffickers intended to sell me in the Southlands, perhaps because I had been too compliant along the way, even serving him tea and water, or maybe simply because I was a frail young girl. He didn't guard against me much. When the boat docked in the Southlands, all the other girls he brought were sold off, leaving only me behind. That night, drunk and boisterous, he demanded I attend to him by washing his feet. I lowered my gaze and complied meekly, as he sighed in comfort, boasting about having a noble young lady wash his feet. He drunkenly grumbled about the increasingly heavy taxes in the Southlands, where more and more desperate commoners turned to banditry, preying on merchants and travelers. This year, floods struck again, submerging countless fertile fields and villages. The desperate survivors, unable to survive, resorted to selling their children, with many daughters being traded for mere handfuls of grain, making his business even more difficult. He let out a heavy, drunken belch, then suddenly grinned at me. Luckily, there's still you, little girl, who helped me make a windfall. I wonder who you offended. Someone paid a hefty sum to have me sell you into the lowest brothels of the Southlands. A chill ran through me. Who was that person? He slurred, shaking his head. Don't know. They were masked. While he was dead drunk, I slit his throat, set the boat on fire, and escaped. But in the vast Southlands, I had no one to turn to and ended up a beggar. When you're weak, a pretty face isn't an asset. It only invites malice. Even as a young girl, I faced countless lecherous men trying to deceive, violate, and destroy me. No fine robes or kindly disguises could hide the lustful glint in their murky eyes directed at a mere child. I had to smear mud on my face and cover myself in filth just to avoid making even begging an unbearable struggle. To survive, I knelt and begged, was beaten and kicked like trash, fought with stray dogs for food, stole offerings from graves, slept in charity houses, and lay in unmarked burial grounds. As the only girl in the Liu family, I grew up spoiled by my parents and 4 older brothers, raised in luxury and comfort. My pampered body simply couldn't endure hardship, even with overwhelming hatred in my heart. constantly telling myself to live on, to survive like a dog if I must, to seek revenge. I still fell ill, burning with fever. I collapsed by the roadside, though my body was scorching hot. I felt a bone, chilling cold, but with my tattered clothes offering no warmth. I could only shiver uncontrollably. I thought I would die right there. But when I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a dilapidated temple, with a boy of about 13 or 14 testing my temperature by placing his hand on my forehead. Seeing me awake, he cried out joyfully, "She's awake, she's awake, she's awake." Immediately, 7 or 8 children of similar age to me gathered around, boys and girls alike, all as sallow, skinned, emaciated, and poorly dressed as I was. They told me in a chorus of voices that they were a band of beggars who stuck together. The boy who had cared for me was called Gio, their leader, and he was the one who had found me and saved my life. From that day on, I was no longer alone. I finally had companions. We begged during the day and shared whatever food we managed to get in the dilapidated temple at night. The famine in the Southlands was severe, and displaced victims flocked in droves toward the prefectural cities. But under the orders of Provincial Governor Xu Qingjiang, the cities in the Southlands had shut their gates, refusing to accept the refugees. Inside the walls lay hordes of wealth. Outside, countless starved corpses. The desperate cries and pleas of the displaced victims could be clearly heard even through the city walls. Yet the wealthy households within the walls continued to live in luxury, feasting and reveling night after night, preferring to let their grain rot rather than distribute it for relief. We were afraid of being driven out of the city as vagrants, so we remained cautious. Most of the time, we couldn't beg for enough food and had to endure hunger, huddling together to sleep. It wasn't until the emperor dispatched the crown prince to provide disaster relief that the situation began to improve. As soon as the crown prince arrived in the Southlands, he swiftly dealt with provincial governor Xu Qingjiang, along with other officials who had abetted his wrongdoing and wealthy families that had hoarded grain to drive up prices. Additionally, the Zhou clan, the crown prince's maternal family, and the foremost noble house in the Southlands, voluntarily donated large quantities of grain to aid in the relief efforts, quickly stabilizing the disaster situation in the region. My companions and I blended in with the refugees to receive the relief porridge. That was the first time I laid eyes on Crown Prince Yinrong. He stood in the porridge shed, personally distributing the food, surrounded by officials and guards who clustered around him like stars encircling the moon. His ethereal beauty, gentle demeanor, and the moon, white brocade robe he wore starkly contrasted with the disheveled, foul-smelling refugees crowded together. I was so captivated that I didn't notice when a middle-aged man, who had already received his porridge, snatched mine and knocked me to the ground, just as I was feeling frustrated. The crown prince approached, helped me up, ordered punishment for the man who had greedily gulped down my porridge, and personally ladled another bowl for me. I stared at his hand as he scooped the porridge, his slender, pale fingers now stained with my grime. Yet I still felt that hand was as pure and sacred as white jade blessed before the Buddha, much like his reputation as a benevolent gentleman, pure as frost and snow, sincere and unadorned. That evening, for the first time, we didn't have to rack our brains over how to fill our bellies. Instead, we chatted freely around the campfire. We discussed the disaster in the Southlands, the jade, like virtue of the crown prince, the wealthy and powerful Zhou family, and the former provincial governor Xu Qingjiang, now a prisoner being escorted to the capital. We talked about ourselves, our pasts, and our futures. Perhaps in the eyes of the world, we beggars with lives as cheap as grass only dreamt of begging enough food to avoid hunger. But in truth, each of us had our own aspirations. Guzi wanted to study. Xiao, Neo dreamed of becoming a peddler. Eryu wanted to find her parents. Minner wanted to go to the capital to broaden her horizons. Jio wanted to join the army and become a great general who expands the empire's territory. He said, back when I was begging outside the tea house, I overheard the storyteller inside telling a tale. I can't quite recall the specific details, but one line stuck with me. Are kings and nobles born of special blood? Who says a beggar like me can't become a great general someday? As Gio spoke these words, the firelight danced across his face, making his confident eyes sparkle brilliantly. I agreed. Yes, as long as we survive, anything is possible. He asked me, what about you? Me? What I want, of course, is revenge. I was considering the possibility of seeking help from the Crown Prince. Even growing up in Jingzhou Prefecture, I had heard of Crown Prince Yin Rong's fine reputation. Yin Rong is the third son of His Majesty, born to the late Empress. His Majesty deeply loved Empress Zhou, who died in childbirth, and thus holds her only surviving child in the highest regard. Yin Rong was appointed Crown Prince at the age of 7, known for his early wisdom, composing poetry at 5, creating the Xingjing Night Banquet, painting for the Emperor's birthday at 7, hunting 9 wolves solo during the autumn hunt at 9, and after observing court politics at 10, he often went incognito to understand the people's hardships. His political proposals mostly benefited the populace, earning admiration from both the court and the common people. The Crown Prince is supremely benevolent and kind. Surely, he will help me, right? As I was lost in my own scheming thoughts, Arya, who had been playfully roughhousing with Minner nearby, suddenly tumbled and fell onto me. Minner chased after her, tickling Arya's sensitive spots, making her squirm and giggle in my arms. She said, Ayu, it's really wonderful. Yes, it truly is, though those days were harsh. With tattered clothes and empty stomachs, they were among the few peaceful moments I had after my family was destroyed. I had thought our little band of beggars would continue relying on each other like this until we each pursued our own ambitions. But Gio betrayed us. He wanted to join the army, and he needed money. He sold the boys into hard labor camps and the girls into brothels. A beggar's life is cheap, worth little money. He had to sell everyone to scrape together travel expenses. He taught me a harsh lesson. It turns out you can't fully trust friends either, even if they once saved your life. Fate seemed to spare no effort in driving me to the brink. The madam who bought us was heartless, specializing in raising child prostitutes to serve clients with perverse tastes. The very night our escape attempt was discovered, the madam sent me to the room of a fat, old client. I didn't resist, nor did I plan to die to preserve my purity. I had to survive, even if trampled into the mud. I was determined to live on. I hadn't yet sought help from the Crown Prince, hadn't yet avenged my family. I couldn't die in ignorance, not even knowing who my enemies were. But when I saw Arya's small, mangled body being carried out of a room, I couldn't contain my rage. Her eyes were wide open, and her dangling hand still tightly clutched a grimy, discolored tassel. She once said her mother had made this for her. She had long forgotten how she became separated from her parents, where her home was, or how she ended up wandering the Southlands. All her faith and hope for the future were tied to this braided cord, now extinguished in her clouded, lifeless eyes. A human life is so fragile, yet so heavy, crushing down upon my heart. When that fat bastard reached for me with hands still stained by Arya's blood, I yanked the hairpin from my head and drove it deep into his exposed belly. You bitch, he howled, backhanding me to the floor, then furiously hauled me up by my hair and smashed my head against the bedpost. I fought with every ounce of strength, biting, scratching, using any weapon my hands could find to resist. A weak girl's murderous intent and hatred couldn't make a man fear. They only fueled his desire to torment. The more I resisted, the more excited the lust filled eyes of the fat man became. He laughed maniacally as he tore my clothes, gripping my neck, and even with a bleeding wound in his abdomen, he was still eagerly intent on assaulting me. It was at my most desperate moment that Zhu Rong appeared. He burst through the door, sword in hand, swiftly killed the dead fat man on top of me, and draped his luxurious cloak over my naked body. His men killed the madam and set the brothel ablaze, handling everything with ruthless efficiency. He told me he was the second prince and that my father had once been his tutor. He explained that the Liu family's massacre occurred because my father had uncovered evidence that the crown prince's maternal clan, the Zhous, along with the Southland's provincial governor Xu Qingjiang, were wreaking havoc in the region, sparking widespread rebellion. He said that upon learning of my family's tragedy and that I was the sole survivor, he had searched for me for a long time, holding me protectively in his arms. He expressed immense relief. "Xinhua, thank heavens you're alive, and that I've managed to preserve your father's only remaining bloodline." The raging flames of the brothel cast flickering shadows across half of his strikingly handsome features. He acted so convincingly, feigned so perfectly, but my keen sense of smell detected the ambergris mingled with the scent of blood on him. I also recognized the malicious amusement hidden behind the false compassion in his phoenix, like eyes, identical to that of the man in black from that night. In the depths of midnight dreams, I had seen these eyes countless times, watching mockingly as my 4 elder brothers were forced to choose between candy and a dagger. I dreamed of these eyes, gazing at me with disdain and profound meaning as they said, "A little girl can't stir up much trouble. Keeping her alive will be more amusing than killing her." I stiffened in his embrace, desperately controlling myself not to tremble or reveal any hint of suspicion. I heard him say, "Xinhua, it was Grand Tutor Zhou, the crown prince's maternal grandfather, who sent someone to slaughter your family. Your enemies are the Zhou clan and the crown prince." Zhu Rong handed me a memorial of impeachment. The memorial bore my father's distinctive and principal handwriting, detailing the numerous crimes of Xu Qingjiang, the provincial governor of the Southlands, who had colluded with the Zhou clan over the years. They concocted various pretexts to impose exorbitant taxes for personal gain, allowed the Zhou clan to seize civilian farmlands, and oppress the people, plunging the southern regions into dire straits. Zhu Rong told me that my father's memorial never reached the emperor. It was intercepted by Grand Tutor Zhou, and it was this very memorial that brought disaster upon my family. He meticulously explained how the crown prince's faction, led by Grand Tutor Zhou, held immense power at court. My father, being overly loyal and upright, stood alone yet still sought to champion the people's grievances single-handedly. As he spoke, his expression was filled with sorrow, appearing genuinely anguished over the unjust death of a loyal official, a stark contrast to the cruelty he had shown when slaughtering my entire family that night. I knew his true target was the crown prince. I also knew that my family's calamity indeed stemmed from my father's impeachment of the Zhou clan. An intercepted impeachment memorial was enough to frame the Zhou clan, providing Grand Tutor Zhou with a pretext to exterminate my entire family. Zhu Rong intended to use my family's tragic deaths and the demise of an imperial censor who advocated for the people to stir public outrage and provoke His Majesty's wrath, thereby undermining Grand Tutor Zhou and the Crown Prince. Clearly, Zhu Rong failed. The prefect of Jingzhou Prefecture covered up my family's tragedy, likely with Grand Tutor Zhou's involvement, fearing that an official investigation would expose his suppression of my father's memorial. Zhu Rong expressed deep regret over this. The details of your family's case reached the capital, but unfortunately, before they could be presented to His Majesty, Grand Tutor Zhou suppressed them again. I once heard my father discuss matters of the imperial family. His Majesty has quite a few sons, but the second prince, Zhu Rong, has always been rather obscure. It's said his mother passed away shortly after his birth, earning him the reputation of being ill-omened and thus not favored. Out of affection for the crown prince, and to pave his way, His Majesty sent most other princes to their fiefdoms early on. Surprisingly, Zhu Rong was an exception, allowed to remain in the capital, and even instructed by His Majesty to observe court affairs in recent years. Even so, he has always maintained a low profile in court, being amiable and avoiding excessive interactions with officials. Who would have thought that this man was actually a deranged madman? Now, with his deceptively gentle face, he asked me, "Xinhua, would you come with me to the capital to overthrow the crown prince and avenge your family?" I had no choice. The day I followed Zhu Rong into the capital coincided with the return of the Crown Prince's party from their disaster relief mission. This relief effort in the Southlands had greatly boosted the prestige of the Crown Prince and the Zhou clan. As soon as the four-horse carriage bearing the Eastern Palace insignia entered the outer city under guard escort, it was met with enthusiastic crowds lining the streets. Hidden among the jostling crowd, I heard praises for the Crown Prince all around, commending his generosity, his benevolence and righteousness, his elimination of public evils, and how he and the Zhou clan had saved countless commoners in the Southlands. I saw a pale hand lift the carriage curtain and then let it fall, and heard Zhu Rong say behind me, "Xinhua, do you see how hypocritical my third brother is? Despite Xu Qingzhang's rise from humble origins to the position of provincial governor, how could he ever compare to the Zhou clan, which had been entrenched in the Southlands for generations? Without Grand Tutor Zhou's directives, how could he have concealed his numerous misdeeds in the Southlands from the Emperor's watchful eyes? Unfortunately for Xu Qingzhang, his luck ran out, though Grand Tutor Zhou intercepted your father's impeachment memorial. The unusually heavy spring and summer rains this year breached several river embankments in the Southlands. This flood exposed their wrongdoing, forcing them to sacrifice him as the sole bearer of all guilt. Then, our esteemed Crown Prince, acting as the Imperial Commissioner alongside the Zhou clan, distributed relief and favors in the Southlands to win over the people's hearts. So even those who appear flawless may not be trustworthy after all. Yet, were those collapsed river embankments in the Southlands truly solely due to the heavy rains? Zhu Rong pointed at the officials surrounding the Crown Prince's carriage and at Grand Tutor Zhou, who had come bearing the imperial edict to welcome the procession, then leaned close to whisper in my ear, "Xinhua, do you see them? They are the very arms that uphold the Crown Prince in court. The Crown Prince may seem to hold a transcendent position, but in truth, everything hinges on the Emperor's sole discretion. As long as we sever these supporting arms one by one, without their lift, the Crown Prince will naturally fall. Once he falls, isolated and helpless, with no power to rely on, it will be the perfect time for a complete reckoning, making him lose the Emperor's favor. By then, you can take your revenge on him. Understand? I understand. If I want revenge, I must sever Zhu Rong's supporting arms one by one. I must make him isolated and helpless, with no power to rely on." Zhu Rong raised his hand to gently stroke my hair, enticing me. "Xinhua, are you willing to join me in cutting off the Crown Prince's supporting arms and pulling him down?" He was very tall, his backlit shadow completely enveloping my slender frame, that nauseating ambergris filling my nostrils. He wanted me to become the blade in his hand, wielded against the Crown Prince. I had no choice, but if I don't die, this blade will one day turn against the one who wields it. I pretended to be consumed by hatred for the Crown Prince, looking up at him with eyes full of complete trust. Yes, I joined Zhu Rong's Shadow Guard. Unlike the other children bought into the Shadow Guard, Zhu Rong personally trained me. He taught me how to wield a sword, how to kill. He taught me deception, how to lie in wait, and how to manipulate people's hearts. He taught well, and I learned even better. I went from feeling nauseous at the sight of a corpse to being able to kill without changing expression, from instinctively tensing up in hatred whenever I saw him, to eventually outperforming him in acting, pretending so convincingly that even when he guided my sword hand with his body pressed close against mine, my heartbeat remained steady without a flutter. Sometimes, in Zhu Rong's presence, I would catch a glimpse of my own reflection in the mirror. The look of complete trust and attachment in my eyes as I gazed at him was so convincing, it nearly fooled even myself. He was my enemy, yet also my great teacher. I voraciously absorbed and digested everything he taught me. All I learned from him would one day become chips in my revenge against him. Zhu Rong said the Crown Prince relies on three main pillars: civil officials, military power, and wealth. The civil pillar naturally refers to Grand Tutor Zhou, head of the civil officials. The military power was held by the Duke of Jinghua, who commanded the capital garrison forces and maintained close ties with Grand Tutor Zhou. The financial support came from a wealthy merchant named Xianqin, who served as the crown prince's financial backer. He said that eliminating these key supporters of the crown prince was the least desirable strategy. The best approach would be to turn them to our own use. Yet, I pondered how figures like Zhu Rong and Grand Tutor Zhou could manipulate situations at will, treat human lives as worthless, and commit atrocities indiscriminately, all because of the power they wielded. That's why Shu Qingjiang could refuse to open the city gates, watching countless disaster victims starve to death, even to the point of cannibalism. That's why the Zhou clan could wreak havoc in the Southlands, yet have a third-rank official take all the blame, while shamelessly seeking fame through disaster relief efforts. That's why even an unfavored prince like Zhu Rong had the means to raise numerous secret guards and assassins, capable of slaughtering my entire family over the succession struggle and manipulating me to this extent. Even if I one day managed to reach the emperor and present my grievances directly, what would it change? Since ancient times, no emperor has ever executed his own son over the grievances of commoners. The status Zhu Rong was born with granted him the privilege of preferential treatment. Power truly is a remarkable thing. Since these forces could serve Grand Tutor Zhou and Zhu Rong, why couldn't they serve me if I had power in my hands? Why worry about not being able to kill Zhu Rong for revenge? By Zhu Rong's side, I often saw a woman named Fu Yin. She was 4 years older than me, strikingly beautiful, and extremely skilled in the art of seduction. I heard Zhu Rong had several courtesans train her in bedroom arts, then sent her to seduce one political rival after another, using her to gather information or assassinate them in their beds. The first time we met, she had just returned from a kill, a fresh bite mark from recent abuse still visible on her neck. When I glanced at it, she shot me a cold look. "What are you staring at? You'll end up just like me sooner or later." I sensed hostility in her icy demeanor. She didn't like me, and I didn't like her either. Amid the heavy scent of blood on her, I caught a faint, distinctive fragrance of jasmine powder. I had smelled this fragrance on the night of my family's massacre, coming from the masked assassin who forced me to my knees before Zhu Rong. But I was certain that none of the assassins Zhu Rong brought that night had a feminine figure. Later, I learned that, like me, she was one of only 2 female shadow guards personally recruited and trained by Zhu Rong. She had always been Zhu Rong's most favored blade. 2 years later, I too became a blade in Zhu Rong's hand. My first assignment from Zhu Rong was to eliminate a wealthy merchant named Xianqin. Few knew that this obscure merchant named Qin possessed wealth rivaling nations, with countless enterprises serving as the financial backbone of the Crown Prince's faction. Zhu Rong was ambitious. Merely killing Xianqin wouldn't sever the Crown Prince's funding, as Grand Tutor Zhou and his allies could quickly replace him with another from the Qin clan. He wanted the entire Qin family fortune. Though Xianqin was past 40, he had no heir. Zhu Rong decided to provide him with a son who would inherit everything after his death. He found a 10-year-old boy who bore an 80% resemblance to Xianqin, but had both legs severed, renamed him Fengqin, and had us pose as fraternal twins, going to the Qin estate to claim kinship by falsely stating we were Xianqin's long-lost children. It was a lie that could be easily exposed, because Xianqin was a depraved pervert who only desired beautiful girls under 10 years old. He was incapable with any female who had started menstruating. All the girls he had violated had not yet reached menarche. So, how could there possibly be any offspring of his wandering outside? But when I pushed Fengqin's wheelchair and knelt outside the gates of the Qin estate, Xianqin took one look at my face and, without hesitation, publicly acknowledged us. Perhaps due to my time as a beggar and the hardships endured in the Shadow Guard. At 12 years old, I was as small and frail as a 10-year-old. A pretty, delicate little girl was the trap Zhu Rong had crafted for Xianqin. I overheard Xianqin's steward privately advising him, "Those 2 children may not be your own. Master, it's quite possible someone is setting a trap for you." Xiao, who bought piracy protection, fine book, search bot Chu Xiaohu, reliable and stable, no pitfalls. But Xianqin grinned with a lecherous expression. Whether it's my child or not doesn't matter. Did you see that little girl's appearance? A peerless beauty in this world. How could I let her slip away? The steward's face changed. Usually playing with girls from ordinary families is one thing, but if these two children are really someone else's trap, would touching her bring anything good? Xianqin didn't care at all. So what? I rose from nothing to wealth rivaling nations. If I didn't have some tricks up my sleeve, how could I have controlled the Qin family's vast enterprise for so many years? Even if something really happens, with Grand Tutor Zhou and others protecting me, at most I'd serve 3 to 5 years in prison. For a child of such beauty, 3 years is a bloody bargain. 5 years isn't a loss. Trading 3 years of my life for a lifetime of her suffering is quite worthwhile. Like Zhu Rong, he looked down on me, considering me his exclusive possession, never imagining that a seemingly beautiful and harmless young girl like me could have the ability to kill him. But I'm not in a hurry. I want what he holds, the means to control all of the Qin family's assets, and even threaten Grand Tutor Zhou. Zhu Rong wants the entirety of the Qin family, and so do I. Wealth can buy power. That's what Zhu Rong taught me. However, Zhu Rong doesn't trust me enough, and has assigned another shadow guard to monitor my every move. I need to evade his watchful eyes to obtain what Xianqin holds and hide it away. The shadow guard assigned to watch me is Shadow 7, who has feelings for Fuyin. The jasmine, scented powder Fuyin uses was uniquely crafted by him for her, one of a kind. He was one of the assassins who slaughtered my entire family that night. Yet Fu Yin is in love with Zhu Rong. I heard about Fu Yin's background in the Shadow Guard camp. 7 years ago, her uncle offended a local official aligned with the Crown Prince's faction, leading to the massacre of her entire family, leaving her as the sole survivor. That year she was 9, and had it not been for Zhu Rong's rescue, she would have likely ended up in a brothel, living a fate worse than death. That day, he was impeccably dressed, his expression full of compassion, while she was barely clothed and utterly disheveled. Yet this noble figure, without any disdain, shielded her in his embrace, personally applied medicine to her wounds, and taught her how to seek revenge. From then on, she regarded Zhu Rong as a deity, a faith, someone for whom she would sacrifice everything without hesitation. It sounds familiar, doesn't it? This was also the script Zhu Rong had arranged for me. I deliberately brought up the nearly identical life experiences Fu Yin and I shared, just as Shadow 7 urged me again to take action against Xianqin. We both suffered similar misfortunes, bore the same deep-seated grudges, yet were equally fortunate to have met the second Your Highness, weren't we? Shadow 7 paused, his expression growing complex. He knew all too well the true nature of the so-called salvation between Zhu Rong and me. I bet he would investigate the truth for the woman he loved. After that day, Shadow 7 vanished without a trace. I could finally take action against Xianqin. What Xianqin possessed were several account books, recording the dark secrets of officials under Grand Tutor Zhou's faction and many key figures of the Qin clan, hidden by him in a villa by Moonwatch River. That villa was specifically arranged by Xianqin for high-ranking officials and nobles to indulge in debauchery, with utterly depraved activities taking place inside. Within the villa was an elegant chamber exclusive to Xianqin, off-limits to outsiders, where the account books were concealed. No one would expect him to hide such crucial items in a place with such chaotic comings and goings. I once sneaked in under cover of darkness, but failed to locate the mechanism hiding the items. So I deliberately left traces and, the next day, used some tricks to have Xianqin bring me to the villa, ensuring his hands were coated with a specially blended fragrance I prepared. If he discovered the chamber had been breached, his first move would undoubtedly be to check if the account books were missing. Once his fragrance-laden hands touched those books, my nose would surely detect it. Then, he could die. However, an unexpected incident occurred when I tried to kill him. Shadow 7, who was supposed to assist me, was absent, forcing me to kill Xianqin with a single chopstick before being chased by shadow guards and jumping into the Moonwatch River. Under the cover of night, I hid in the cool summer river, swimming downstream like a fish, while the shadow guards pursued relentlessly, launching countless arrows and darts into the water. As pain shot through my back and I was on the verge of giving up, I spotted a black, canopied boat cruising the Moonwatch River, with a white, robed figure seated at its bow. It was the Crown Prince, Yinrong. Without hesitation, I swam toward the boat and concealed myself against its hull in the water, recognizing the Eastern Palace emblem on the boat. Xianqin's shadow guards hesitated in the darkness. Seeing I wouldn't leave the vessel, they dared not offend the Crown Prince's dignity and reluctantly withdrew. Holding on to the boat, I drifted with the current until certain the danger had passed, then prepared to leave, but a pale hand grasped my arm, lifting me halfway out of the water. In my surprise, I looked up and met Yinrong's gentle phoenix eyes. Holding me with one hand, he smiled at the guard rowing his boat. "Look what I've caught in this river." Clearly, he had noticed me following alongside the boat long ago. "Young lady, who are you? Why were those people trying to kill you?" This was my third time meeting Yinrong. He still wore the same white robe, standing against the clear breeze and bright moon over Moonwatch River, appearing immaculately clean. Yet in Xianqin's private estate, officials from the Crown Prince's faction engaged in nightly debauchery, where countless bodies of women, men, boys, and girls were carried out. When the upper reaches of a river are polluted, how could the lower reaches remain clean? I gave an almost imperceptible cold smile and only answered his first question. "My surname is Liu, from the Liu clan of Jingzhou Prefecture." Yinrong was momentarily stunned. I lowered my head and bit his hand hard where he held me, taking advantage of his pain to release me, then disappeared into the water and swiftly swam away. With Xianqin dead, Fengqin, as the child Xianqin had publicly acknowledged, naturally became his sole heir. The crippled Fengqin was merely a puppet, and Zhu Rong's men easily took over Xianqin's entire business empire through him, wealth rivaling that of a nation now all belonged to Zhu Rong. After Shu Qingjiang took all the blame and his entire family was executed, the Zhou clan in the Southlands became extremely cautious, no longer daring to amass wealth recklessly. The Crown Prince's faction's largest source of funds came from the Qin family. Now that the Qin family's businesses had fallen into Zhu Rong's hands, it was like cutting off one of Grand Tutor Zhou's arms. How could he accept this willingly? But no matter how unwilling he was, no one dared to investigate how Xianqin had died. Once investigated, the secrets of that riverside manor by Moonwatch River would inevitably be exposed. They didn't dare to take that risk. Zhu Rong was quite satisfied with how I completed this mission, but when I went to report back, he asked me one question. "Xinyue, do you know why Shadow 7 disappeared?" I glanced at Fu Yin, who was serving by his side, gently fanning him. I did indeed know why Shadow 7 had vanished. The massacre of Fu Yin's entire family was indeed Zhu Rong's doing. 7 years ago, when Zhu Rong was only 11, he was already a deranged madman. He truly enjoyed toying with people's hearts. In his mind, girls like Fu Yin and me, possessing only beauty, could easily be manipulated by love. With just a little favor from him, we would willingly risk our lives for our enemy. He played us like puppets, deliberately teaching us how to wield the knife, never worrying that it might one day turn against him. I chose not to tell Fu Yin the truth myself. I had experienced too much betrayal, been blinded by too many illusions. Human hearts are fickle and unpredictable. I dare not trust anyone lightly. On the day Shadow 7 arranged to meet Fu Yin, I followed secretly. I heard Shadow 7 tell Fu Yin that he was willing to betray Zhu Rong for her, take her far away to forget all this absurdity, and also help her carry the burden of hatred, aiding her in seeking revenge against Zhu Rong at any cost. He asked her to make a choice, but Fu Yin chose to kill him, hidden in the shadows. I watched her use the sword Shadow 7 had given her to pierce through his body. Her eyes were filled with hatred, not For Jurong, as she said, "Why did you tell me? You shouldn't have told me." Indeed, a woman easily swayed by love cannot be trusted. Shadow 7 must have long ago told her about my origins. Someone as clever as Fu Yin would surely have guessed. That's why she regarded me with hostility from our first meeting, because my existence shattered the illusion Ju Rong had woven for her, the dream she had once decided to devote her life to. Yet Shadow 7 insisted on tearing away the pretense she feigned ignorance of. So it's true, some can fall in love with the very person who slaughtered their entire family. I heard that Fu Yin later led a massacre against that noble's household to avenge her family, even personally subjecting him to a slow, torturous death. But now, knowing Ju Rong is the true enemy, she tells Shadow 7 he had no choice. He must have had his reasons. Deceiving me must have pained him deeply. But it doesn't matter. Even if she's an enemy, she might still become the blade I used to take revenge on Ju Rong, just like how she killed Shadow 7 for me, allowing me to evade Ju Rong's surveillance and obtain Xian Qin's account books, the true wealth of the Qin family. Before dying, Shadow 7 struggled to ask Fu Yin, "You always say that if His Highness hadn't saved you in the brothel, you would have been in hell long ago. But didn't he then send you to another man's bed, making you use your body to kill for him when you were just 12? Fu Yin had just used her body again to eliminate one of Ju Rong's political rivals. That extremely repulsive middle-aged man, the slimy, disgusting feel of his hands still lingered on her skin. She couldn't control her trembling. Shadow 7 gripped her hand tightly, dying with eyes wide open. "Fu Yin, did His Highness truly save you?" "I don't know, my lord. I know Ju Rong is testing me, suspecting that Shadow 7's disappearance is connected to me." I simply lower my head and eyes, maintaining a submissive posture. He stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly grabbed my left wrist, pushed up the sleeve, and carefully examined the mark of chastity on my upper arm before smiling. "Good, you've been obedient. You didn't let Xian Qin touch you. I told you I wouldn't allow anyone else to touch you. If you let another man lay hands on you, I would kill you." In that instant, I saw Fu Yin's beautiful face twitch uncontrollably. 2 years later, Ju Rong sent me to sever the crown prince's second arm of support. He wanted me to become the adopted daughter of the Duke of Jingua. The Duke of Jingua had achieved illustrious military exploits, and most military officers in the court followed his lead. The only pity was that he had no heir to carry on his legacy. The Duke and his wife were deeply devoted to each other. After many years of marriage, he had never taken a concubine. They had only one daughter, named Mingzhu Yin, who was betrothed to Tingyuan Zhou, the youngest grandson of Grand Tutor Zhou, while still in her swaddling clothes. Unfortunately, Mingzhu Yin went missing at the age of 6. The Duke and his wife were heartbroken and had been searching for her everywhere for years. Most of the Zhou clan's direct descendants pursued scholarly careers, yet Tingyuan Zhou chose the military path. With the Duke of Jingua's support, he became a young general in the capital garrison at an early age. The Zhou clan deliberately refrained from arranging another marriage for Tingyuan Zhou, intending to leverage his childhood bond and engagement with Mingzhu Yin to position him as a quasi-son to the Duke of Jingua, ultimately aiming for him to take control of the capital garrison's military authority. However, once I enter the Duke of Jingua's estate, I will have ample means to sow discord between the Duke and Grand Tutor Zhou, and then devise a way to persuade the Duke to transfer his military power to Ju Rong's allies. This strategy of the cuckoo in the nest bears a striking resemblance to the one used against Xian Qin. Ju Rong had someone bribe the Taoist temple frequently visited by the Duchess of Jingua for prayers. The temple's abbot provided her with a birth date and time, instructing her to adopt the person with that horoscope as her foster daughter, promising that her biological daughter would then be found. That was my birth date and time. Yearning deeply for her daughter, the Duchess of Jingua soon sought me out. By then, I was 14 years old. My once petite frame had stretched tall, my posture graceful, and my blossoming features were of unparalleled elegance. Over these 2 years, Zhu Rong specifically hired elderly matrons from the palace to refine my manners and engaged tutors to teach me the four arts. Unlike his treatment of Fu Yin, he seemed determined to mold me into a noble lady of both talent and beauty. Now, every smile and gesture of mine carries the dignified elegance of a well-bred lady, making me perfectly suitable as an adopted daughter without bringing shame to the Duke of Jinggua's household. I also managed to obtain Mingzhu Yin's preserved birth hair to make incense, which I now wear on my person. The Duchess of Jingua, who initially had her doubts, couldn't hold back her tears upon seeing me and catching the subtle scent of her daughter on me, clutching my hand tightly. But man proposes, God disposes. Just as the Duchess was about to formally announce my adoption, Mingzhu Yin returned. Zhu Rong's plans were disrupted. With the engagement between Mingzhu Yin and Tingyuan Zhou still intact, he feared that through this marriage alliance, the Crown Prince would gain both Grand Tutor Zhou's literary support and the Duke of Jinggua's military backing, making his position unshakable. Thus, he had to settle for the next best option, having me break off the engagement between the two families, ideally turning them into bitter enemies. Zhu Rong wanted the military power in the Duke of Jinggua's hands, and so did I. I chose not to approach Tingyuan Zhou, but instead targeted Mingzhu Yin. Using romance to manipulate a woman was also something Zhu Rong taught me. Yet, in this world, what can sway a woman isn't necessarily love alone. Having her beloved daughter return to her, the Duchess of Jingua didn't want Mingzhu Yin to suffer any grievances, so she never mentioned the matter of adopting me. However, she still believed that her daughter's return was due to the decision to adopt me, so she compensated me in other ways, funding the opening of the House of Fragrance. The business at the House of Fragrance thrived. My nose could easily distinguish every spice in a complex blend of scents, allowing me to create unique perfume powders tailored to the needs and preferences of each noble lady. Coupled with my striking appearance, I naturally attracted many admirers, with scions of powerful families spending fortunes. On the opening day of the House of Fragrance, I unexpectedly received a brocade box containing a token from the Eastern Palace, delivered with great respect by the messenger. My master said, "Should you encounter any trouble at the House of Fragrance, simply present this token." Every 3 days thereafter, a discreet carriage would halt outside the shop. The young guard driving it would hurriedly enter, indiscriminately purchasing numerous expensive spices before swiftly departing. From my blending chamber on the second floor, I occasionally glimpsed a pale hand lifting the carriage curtain to speak with the guard, the dark red bite marks on its back starkly visible in the sunlight. Since the Southland's relief efforts 4 years ago, the Crown Prince had suddenly become idle and incompetent in court affairs, immersing himself in poetry and painting, which greatly diminished his public reputation. In contrast, Zhu Rong, backed by the Qin family's immense wealth, managed to bribe and win over officials at all levels. As his influence grew while the princes waned, Zhu Rong now commanded significant power in the court. During her years wandering abroad, Mingzhu Yin endured many hardships. High society ladies scorned her for her lack of refinement, ostracizing her with contempt, while she found them pretentious and disliked their company. With just a little targeted kindness and shared interests, she came to regard me as a rare confidant in this world, preferring only my companionship and spending every day lingering in the House of Fragrance, watching me blend perfumes. Whenever I had free time, she would drag me around the capital for wild adventures. The Duchess of Jingua doted on her, never restricting her spending, giving her the best of everything. Even every decorative tassel she wore had to be handcrafted by the Duchess herself to ensure quality. Each of those tassels was exquisitely unique. When Mingzhu Yin's skirts swayed with her movements, they danced lightly, creating an indescribably bright and captivating beauty. I secretly took some of Tingyuan Zhou's hair to create a foul-smelling incense, then deliberately asked Mingzhu Yin to test it for me. She complained about the nausea without any suspicion, having been separated from her family for many years. she had little affection for Tingyuan Zhou to begin with. After experiencing this foul incense, she grew even more distant from him, repeatedly declining his invitations and quietly telling me that Tingyuan Zhou smelled bad. Calculating that the timing was about right, I invited Mingzhu Yin to the famous Moonwatch Tower by Moonwatch River to sample their newly introduced dishes. Before all the dishes had even been served, laughter and teasing voices emerged from the private room next door. Young General Zhou, by all accounts you're quite handsome and accomplished for your age. In terms of family background, few noble sons in the entire capital can compare to you. But your fiancé doesn't seem interested in you, always spending time with that orphan girl from the Liu family. Could it be she has sapphic love tendencies? Aren't you jealous? Tingyuan Zhou's slightly drunken voice came through. Why should I be jealous? At worst, I'll take both of them. Let them continue being good sisters in my backyard. Women are just inexperienced with men. Once they've tried, they'll become completely submissive. Someone burst into laughter. That Liu orphan girl is exceptionally beautiful. If not for the protection of the Duke of Jinggua's estate, who knows how many men would be pestering her at the House of Fragrance. Young General Zhou, could it be you've had your eye on her for a while? Mingzhu Yin suddenly stood up and stormed over, kicking open the door of the adjacent private room. There she saw Tingyuan Zhou with a stunningly beautiful woman in red leaning against him, using her delicate fingers adorned with crimson polish to hold a wine cup to his lips. She laughed in anger. Tingyuan Zhou, you're just wonderful. Thus, the engagement between the two families was broken. Tingyuan Zhou was a fool. Originally, just canceling the engagement wouldn't have turned the Zhou clan and the Duke of Jinggua's estate into enemies. But he listened to someone's instigation and actually disguised himself as a mountain bandit to attempt kidnapping when Mingzhu Yin and I went to the outskirts for leisure. He cornered me into an abandoned old house with 4 of his retainers. His face twisted with a sinister smile. Xinyu Liu, no wonder you schemed against me. Who would have thought? You're actually Qinghe Liu's daughter. I rested my hand on my waist. Where's Mingzhu? Tingyuan Zhou sneered. She's sleeping next door. She refused the easy way, so she'll get the hard way. After we finish playing with you, wretch, I'll pretend to rescue her. By then, she'll be begging me to marry her. If news of the kidnapping spread, Mingzhu Yin's reputation would be ruined, leaving her with only 2 options: marry far away from the capital or marry Tingyuan Zhou. I glanced at the 4 retainers surrounding me. Seeing this, Tingyuan Zhou's eyes filled with smugness. What, scared? If you strip naked yourself and kneel to please me, I might not. Before his words could fully escape, he clutched at the sudden crimson line appearing on his neck, staring at me in terror before collapsing in the same manner as the 4 attendants. I gently wiped the blood from the flexible sword in my hand. Watching Tingyuan Zhou's still, twitching body, and sighed softly. Fu Yin, when you urged him to seek death, did you not tell him that my killing technique is swift? A faint, distinctive scent of jasmine powder drifted in from outside as the dilapidated door of the old house creaked open, and Fu Yin, clad in red robes, entered with a sword in hand. The day I saw her nestled in Tingyuan Zhou's arms at Moonwatch Tower, I knew there would be complications. I continued to calmly wipe my sword, lifting my gaze to meet hers. Do you wish to kill me? Fu Yin truly is a sharp blade. Over the past 2 years, all the shadow guards who followed Zhurong to raid my home have either mysteriously vanished or died due to errors during missions. Like Shadow 7, they all met their end at Fu Yin's hands. I had long known she would eliminate each of them for me. If Shadow 7 could figure out, the other guards who accompanied me home that day might also be able to. She couldn't tolerate anyone knowing the sordid truth between her and Zhurong. The existence of these people seemed like a pitiful and ridiculous proof of her situation, naturally including me, who shared a similar background. Moreover, even though she and I were both pitiful pawns manipulated by Zhurong, his treatment of us was worlds apart. He ordered her to climb into bed with one man after another, using her body to fuel his ambitions, while he molded me into a pure and elegant lady of high society. when I was learning etiquette from the palace matrons or studying the four arts under my master, I often sensed her watching gaze. She always looked at me with a mix of envy and mockery, as if wanting to tell me, or perhaps to deceive herself, that no matter how special Zhu Rong treated me, we were both just tools for his ambitions. Her eyes held a condescending arrogance, as if she alone knew the truth. She had wanted to kill me for a long time. Tingyuan Zhou kidnapped Mingzhu Yin in an attempt to ruin her reputation, and you killed him. The Duke of Jinggua's estate and the Zhou clan are destined to break ties. Given how deeply the Duke of Jingua cherishes his daughter, there's no chance he would ever side with the Crown Prince again. The Crown Prince's second arm has been severed. Your mission is complete. Your Highness no longer needs you. I will handle the rest for him. Both Fu Yin and I were personally trained by Zhu Rong, so we share the same master. I'm not confident I can defeat her for sure. I let out a light laugh and tossed the blood-stained handkerchief in my hand to the ground. Fu Yin, how do you know your clever schemes aren't part of His Highness's calculations? Suddenly, the rapid sound of numerous hooves approached as a large contingent of officers and soldiers surrounded the area. Leading them was Zhu Rong, mounted on a black steed. Fu Yin turned around in disbelief and saw Zhu Rong dismount, striding purposefully toward the dilapidated house where Mingzhu Yin was held. He carried the unconscious Mingzhu Yin out of the house, carefully placing her into a carriage with the demeanor of a protector. From start to finish, he never once glanced in our direction. Within an hour, the news that the daughter of the Duke of Jingua had been kidnapped and rescued by the second prince would spread throughout the capital. If Zhu Rong wanted the Duke of Jingua's military power, marrying Mingzhu Yin was undoubtedly the quickest way. I looked coldly at Fu Yin. It seems your highness is about to take a first consort. An expression of pain crossed Fu Yin's face. All these years, there had been no women in Zhu Rong's inner court. He never said it outright, but he gave her many ambiguous hints, making her mistakenly believe he loved her too, and that she was special. She didn't know that the ambiguity Zhu Rong had shown her, he had also shown me. The hints he whispered to her, he had whispered to me as well. Blinded by love, she ultimately didn't understand Zhu Rong well enough. The moment she appeared here, I guessed this would be the outcome. From the moment Fu Yin took it upon herself to contact Tingyuan Zhou, her every move was under Zhu Rong's watchful eye, and he went with the flow, turning her scheme to his advantage. He was truly cruel, knowing full well Fu Yin loved him. He deliberately used her hand to marry Mingzhu Yin, perfectly in line with his usual malicious whims. I even suspected that Zhu Rong had long been aware of Fu Yin's killing of those shadow guards and certainly guessed that she knew the truth about her family's massacre. Watching Fu Yin betray her family's vengeance and her own dignity, allowing herself to be utterly used by him, crawling at his feet for the sake of that illusory love, he must have been very pleased. In the end, she became as he intended, easily manipulated by emotions and love. This was the version of her he wanted, and it was the version he originally wanted me to become as well. With Tingyuan Zhou dead by my hand, Grand Tutor Zhou naturally wouldn't let me off. He demanded my life in return, but since Tingyuan Zhou had kidnapped me first, and with the Duke of Jingua arguing fiercely on my behalf, the two sides reached a stalemate, and I was ultimately imprisoned in the Supreme Court. On the third night in the cell, Zhu Rong came to see me. He wore a black cloak, stood in the dimly lit cell, watching me for a long time, and then slowly spoke. I didn't save you. Do you blame me? I respectfully lowered my gaze. Your Highness must have your reasons. He chuckled softly a couple of times. You'll be out soon. Guess who saved you? I looked at him questioningly. Zhu Rong's smile deepened. It was the Crown Prince. I froze in surprise. Zhu Rong raised his hand and caressed my face ambiguously. The Crown Prince said you're the one he fancies, and has asked Father Emperor to grant you the title of secondary consort. He's always been like this. As I grew older, his attitude toward me became increasingly suggestive, full of seduction, just like how he treated Fu Yin. He's so arrogant, thinking he can control me with love just like he controlled Fu Yin. His thumb finally rested on my lips, gently rubbing until they swelled slightly and turned crimson. Go to the crown prince's side. Drive a wedge between him and Grand Tutor Zhou. Cut off his last support, and then kill him. You were always meant for him. On the night I entered the Eastern Palace, Grand Tutor Zhou stormed in with a sword to kill me, but was stopped by the crown prince. As I sat in my room blending a new fragrance, I heard Grand Tutor Zhou outside the house sharply questioning Yinrong. Tingyuan is your cousin. That woman killed your cousin. Doesn't she deserve to die? Yinrong's cold voice came through. He harmed others first. Grand Tutor Zhou was so angry, he could barely catch his breath. He was misled. She did it on purpose. She's Qinghe Lu's daughter. She came to take revenge on the Zhou clan. Yinrong simply asked, why would she seek revenge against the Zhou clan? Grand Tutor Zhou was speechless. Yinrong's voice carried a deep weariness. Grandfather, the Lu family matter. Was it your doing? Grand Tutor Zhou flew into a rage. Of course it wasn't me. Yinrong pressed further. Then did you interfere to cover up the Lu family's case? Grand Tutor Zhou fell silent again. He couldn't speak, nor did he dare to. He dared not mention my father's memorial, nor what the Zhou clan had done in the Southlands. In the end, Grand Tutor Zhou only said, Your Highness, she deliberately sabotaged the engagement between the Zhou clan and the Duke of Jingguo's estate. Zhou Tingyuan had just captured her and Mingzhu Yin when the second prince rushed to rescue them. Don't you find that too coincidental? This woman is a calamity. Keeping her by your side will only bring you harm. I've said all I need to say. Outside, silence lingered for a long while, broken only by the chirping of summer night insects. As Yinrong pushed the door open, I had just lit the newly blended incense in the gilded burner. I gently closed the lid and asked him with a casual smile, Your Highness, how do you find this incense? The wispy, rising smoke slightly blurred his handsome features. He remained silent for a moment before speaking. My grandfather has taken his grievance to the emperor, demanding your execution. Bringing you into the estate was a temporary measure. If you wish to leave, I will find a way to arrange it in due time. Truth be told, this is only the third time we've truly faced each other. The first time, I was a ragged beggar in a city of the Southlands. The second time, I was an assassin seeking your life in Moonwatch River. Now, I am his secondary consort. We were not close. His claim of affection was undoubtedly false. His phoenix eyes somewhat resembled Zhirong's, but when he looked at me, guilt far outweighed any pity. In truth, I knew that ever since that night at Moonwatch River, people from the Eastern Palace had been searching for me. The lone survivor of the Lu family tragedy, Zhirong's frame up had been remarkably successful. Even though Grand Tutor Zhou denied it, Yinrong couldn't help but suspect that the Grand Tutor was the mastermind behind my family's massacre. He wasn't as flawless as the rumors suggested, but neither was he the cunning villain Zhirong made him out to be. He tried to make amends, which is why he sent me that Eastern Palace token. After speaking, Yinrong turned to leave. I rose and embraced him from behind, my soft body pressing tightly against his back. Our summer garments were thin, and our body heat mingled through the delicate gauze of my dress and the soft satin of his robe. His body tensed unconsciously. His breathing grew slightly heavier as he tried to pull my hand away, revealing several bite marks on his pale hand that caught my eye. You needn't do this. I interrupted him, winding myself around him even more tightly. Your Highness, don't go. After that day, Yinrong and I spent what appeared to be an affectionate period together. He treated me well, always staying in my room, constantly sending me gifts, and granting almost every request I made, especially rare spices. If I wanted them, he would go to great lengths to find them for me. In his spare time, he would take me out for spring outings and lake excursions, though more often we would spend our days together in his study. He was deeply learned, fond of elegance, and his painting skills were exceptional. Coming from a scholarly family myself, having been immersed in such an environment since childhood and deliberately cultivated by Zhirong, I was proficient in the four arts, which happened to align with his interests. Sometimes he would paint while I blended fragrances. With just a glance, we could pass each other whatever was needed. We tacitly avoided mentioning those sensitive past events, focusing only on pleasantries and maintaining a facade of peace, which created a false sense of tranquility. Rumors spread outside that the Eastern Palace's secondary consort Liu was excessively favored, to the point where even the future first consort might have to yield to my prominence. Since that day's unpleasant parting, Grand Tutor Zhou had never set foot in the Eastern Palace again. Both the court and the public sensed the discord between the Crown Prince and the Grand Tutor, causing many officials who had supported the Crown Prince to become wavering. On the contrary, the second prince was thriving in his good fortune. The only daughter of the Duke of Xinghua was naturally different from an orphan like me, and since I was a secondary consort while Mingzhu Yin was to be the first consort, her wedding couldn't be hastily arranged. Her marriage to Zhu Rong was meticulously prepared over the course of more than half a year. On the day of the grand wedding, I accompanied Yin Rong to attend the ceremony when a maid accidentally spilled soup on my dress. While changing clothes, Zhu Rong was indeed waiting for me. Now, at the peak of his success, he appeared even more spirited. His phoenix eyes filled with amusement as he looked me over. It seems you're doing well in the Eastern Palace. You've even filled out quite a bit. He handed me several pieces of incriminating evidence against the Zhou clan, including the memorial my father had submitted years ago impeaching the Zhou family. The Duke of Xinghua had fallen out with Grand Tutor Zhou over Tingyuan Zhou, and with Zhu Rong now being his son. In law, half the military officials in court naturally aligned with him as well. Yet Grand Tutor Zhou and the Crown Prince's faction appeared on the verge of collapse. In the current court situation, Grand Tutor Zhou could no longer dominate everything. He could no longer suppress an imperial censor's memorial or cover up the massacre of an official's family, as he had done years before. Zhu Rong said, "The time has come." He wanted me to find an opportunity to hide these pieces of evidence in Yin Rong's study. He had waited so long, scheming meticulously, cutting off the Crown Prince's supporters one by one, all for this day. I did not do this. I directly laid out the evidence of the Zhou clan's crimes on Yin Rong's desk, spreading each piece before him. The evils committed by the Zhou clan were far from limited to just one incident in the Southlands: forming cliques for personal gain, eliminating dissidents, framing loyal officials, amassing wealth through corruption, illegally operating iron mines, raising private armies. Each crime, every deed, too numerous to record. Over the years, the Zhou clan has driven countless families to ruin and despair. After reading it, Yin Rong seemed to crumble instantly, though barely past his youth. A weary, aged aura suddenly enveloped him. His voice was strained and hoarse. "Why have you given these to me?" A wick in the lamp on the table sparked, dimming the light further. I picked up the candle snips, trimming away the excess wick, and the room brightened once more. "I wish to offer your highness a chance. If you take this evidence and enter the palace tonight to expose Grand Tutor Zhou, you can remain the noble and upright crown prince." But that night, Yin Rong sat motionless before the evidence, remaining in his study until dawn without emerging. It wasn't until the following evening that the emperor arrived in person. That day, the Eastern Palace was eerily calm, yet outside, a storm of turmoil raged. A scholar from the Southlands named Yanqing Song struck the drum of grievances, lodging a formal complaint before the emperor. He endured 30 strokes of the court caning, accusing the Zhou clan of having previously manipulated the former Southlands provincial governor Shu Qingjiang to exploit the common people and wreak havoc in the Southlands, even ordering the prefectures not to open their gates to disaster victims during severe floods. With hands stained by blood and dust, he also presented evidence that the Zhou family had secretly recruited large numbers of able-bodied disaster victims during the floods, raising a private army with intentions of rebellion. The accusations pointed directly at Grand Tutor Zhou and the Crown Prince. The Zhou clan could be greedy for wealth. Grand Tutor Zhou could cling to power, but raising a private army crossed the emperor's bottom line. The emperor was furious, imprisoning Grand Tutor Zhou and his family, ordering a thorough investigation, and then personally visiting the Eastern Palace. When the emperor pushed open the study door, Zhu Rong remained motionless in his seat. The emperor entered, casually flipped through the incriminating evidence on the desk, picked up my father's impeachment memorial, glanced at it briefly, then set it down. Yin Rong was the emperor's favorite child. Since being appointed crown prince, the emperor had promoted all his maternal relatives to high positions to pave his way, having raised the child himself. The emperor was well aware of Rong Yin's flaws, too lenient and lacking in decisiveness. As the sovereign, he couldn't possibly be oblivious to the actions of Grand Tutor Zhou and the Zhou clan. He had once believed that one day, Rong Yin would fulfill his wish by personally excising the Zhou clan, that malignant tumor, and become a competent ruler. It was only now that the emperor realized the crown prince was unfit for the heavy responsibility. Rong Yin could neither bring himself to ruthlessly expose his maternal grandfather to clear his own name, nor could he fully commit to the dark path by using the evidence to warn Grand Tutor Zhou for early precautions. Struggling in this dilemma, he ultimately did nothing. Such indecision was unbecoming of an emperor's temperament. Without a word, the emperor let out a long sigh and departed just like that. Rong Yin knew then that the emperor had given up on him. When I first entered the Eastern Palace, it was still midsummer. Now, deep winter had arrived. Standing under the eaves of the study, adorned with icicles, I locked eyes with Rong Yin. His expression was numb, his eyes slightly reddened, and after a long pause, he waved for the guards to bring forth a person. The man was dressed in eunuch's attire, his frame gaunt, shrinking timidly as he was pushed before me. When he lifted his head to look at me, he revealed a familiar face. It was Gio, I know you're the second prince's man. I've been investigating you and found this person. Yin Rong stared coldly at Gio, tell her yourself who ordered you to betray them back then. Gio dropped to his knees before me with a thud, kowtowing desperately. You, please forgive me. The second prince forced me. I had no choice. I stared fixedly at Gio. All these years, I had been searching for him. Arya's death remained vivid in my mind. How could I rest without killing him? But despite having people search through all the major military camps, I never found him. I never imagined he had become a eunuch. That youth by the campfire in the ruined temple of the Southlands, ragged but brimming with confidence, shouting that nobles and generals aren't born to their stations, clamoring to become a great general, now stood hunched and emaciated, his eyes filled with nothing but fear and timidity. Zhu Rong promised him high positions and generous salaries, agreeing to help him become the great general he had always dreamed of being. But after Gio betrayed us, Zhu Rong sent him into the palace to become a eunuch. This certainly aligned with Zhu Rong's twisted sense of humor. Yin Rong looked weary. After I investigated him, I looked into the truth behind your family's massacre years ago. Though I found no concrete evidence, I believe the tragedy had nothing to do with my grandfather. It was the second prince. He used you. You were deceived by him. He is your true enemy. Joe crawled over on his knees, clutching my legs, pleading desperately. Please don't kill me. Don't kill me. I didn't want to do it. I really didn't. It's all the second prince's fault. He deceived me, and he deceived you too. Not a ripple of emotion showed in my eyes as I looked down at Gio. I won't kill you, but someone else will. Seeing my calm expression upon hearing the truth, Yin Rong was taken aback, then suddenly understood. He looked at me in disbelief. You knew. You've known all along? Then, why? Why did you treat me like this? I turned to look at him. Your Highness, do you still remember that night when you returned from the Southlands and received a secret letter? That day, I had just arrived in the capital and stood among the crowd on the street, watching Yin Rong's horse carriage pass by me, watching that flawless, jade-like hand lift the carriage curtain and then let it fall. Zhu Rong asked me if, while in the Southlands, I had ever considered seeking help from the Crown Prince. If I didn't believe that the Crown Prince was the kind of hypocritical, deceitful person he claimed, he said, Xinyue, what if we test him once? That night, Zhu Rong ordered someone to copy my father's memorial impeaching the Zhou clan and the records of my family's tragedy. and secretly deliver them to Yin Rong's study. Yin Rong had two choices: either uphold justice by exposing Grand Tutor Zhou, or be resolute and ruthless by finding the person who delivered the letter and silencing them. Whichever he chose would prove he could be reasoned with, and I would choose to cooperate with him to deal with Zhu Rong. Yet he did nothing. Like now, he found himself caught in a dilemma in the study, sitting through the night in despair, neither exposing Grand Tutor Zhou nor communicating with him, merely burning that letter. Sometimes the one who understands you best isn't an ally, but an opponent. Zhu Rong understood Yin Rong's weaknesses all too well. He guessed that Yin Rong would do nothing. His true adversaries were never Yin Rong himself, but the Crown Prince's faction, led by Grand Tutor Zhou, who pushed Yin Rong forward, and the father-son bond between the Emperor and Yin Rong. As early as that night, he had used that anonymous letter to plant seeds of guilt in Yin Rong's heart toward the Liu family and toward me. That's why in the Supreme Court prison, Zhu Rong said that I was prepared for Yin Rong. I gazed deeply at Yin Rong. That year at Moonwatch River, Your Highness could have followed the clues to uncover the dark secrets in the Qin family's villa, yet you still did nothing. Even now, when I gave you the chance, Your Highness still did nothing. Your Highness is not innocent. For someone in your position, sometimes doing nothing is itself the mistake. If good and evil go unpunished, heaven and earth must be partial. Yin Rong may have been tormented or torn forever since receiving that secret letter. He began neglecting state affairs, immersing himself in calligraphy and painting, deliberately allowing the Crown Prince's faction to weaken in court, hoping they would no longer act recklessly. But he was too benevolent and weak. His weakness destined him to fail in quelling the ambitions of all sides, be it the maternal relatives, his brothers, or the ministers. He could restrain none. His benevolence destined him to be easily swayed by sentiment, forcing him to bear the sins of the Crown Prince's faction in such a foolish manner. After all, he was not the flawless Crown Prince of popular legend, but merely a mortal torn between familial bonds and the fear of abetting evil. To Zhu Rong, such a Crown Prince was riddled with vulnerabilities, not worth conspiring with. Yin Rong curled up in agony, his entire body trembling. Your Highness may not have bloodied your hands directly, but the Zhou clan exploited your influence. Knowing this and doing nothing is a form of indulgence. Your Highness, though sustained by the nation's offerings, you have failed to seek justice for its people. All these are your sins. Step by step, I approached him, took his hand marked with tooth imprints, and placed it upon my slightly rounded belly. Your Highness, I am with child. Will you help me with one last thing? At least, believe it or not, despite all the Second Prince's schemes and meticulous planning, that throne is one he will never ascend. With Zhu Rong deliberately fanning the flames, the crimes of Grand Tutor Zhou and his family stirred uproar throughout the land. Given the Zhou clan's deeds, the Crown Prince could not escape blame. Yin Rong, once praised for his benevolence, saw his reputation plummet, and calls for his removal echoed through the court. But before the edict to depose the Crown Prince was issued, tragic news emerged from the Eastern Palace. He had taken poison and ended his life. When the Emperor rushed to the Eastern Palace once more, Yin Rong, with his last breath, grasped my hand and pleaded to him, Father Emperor, you carries my child. I beg you to protect them, mother and son. The Emperor wept bitterly by the bedside. This was the child he had raised himself. From babbling infancy to toddling steps, from learning to write to observing court affairs, who had grown into the jade, like gentlemen praised by all, in the face of death. All sins, all grievances and resentments, vanished without a trace. Yin Rong was still buried with the rights of a crown prince, posthumously honored by the emperor as Crown Prince Xiaoyi. The emperor likely suspected what role I, a woman from the Liu family, played in the affairs between the Zhou clan and the crown prince. But Yin Rong's dying words and the child in my womb saved me. The grief-stricken emperor vented all his fury upon Grand Tutor Zhou and the Zhou clan, ordering the execution of 3 generations of their family. Many in the crown prince's faction were implicated, and the prefect of Jingzhou Prefecture, who had covered up the massacre of my family, was also imprisoned. On the final day of keeping vigil for Rong, Zhu Rong came late at night. The morning hall was silent. He dismissed all the attendants, leaving only him and me. After offering 3 sticks of incense before the spirit, he told me a story. Once, there was a prince, the emperor's second son, born on the same day as his third brother, both their mothers having died in childbirth. The third brother's mother was the empress, the woman the emperor loved most. So the third brother was named heir at just 7 days old and raised personally by the emperor. Yet, he was branded with the stigma of having caused his mother's death. Enduring cold treatment since childhood, as a child, he couldn't understand why, both having lost their mothers at birth. The crown prince received endless affection while he was ignored by the father emperor. Was there something he lacked compared to the crown prince? So, when he saw the crown prince diligently cultivating both literary and martial arts, praised by the father emperor, he too worked hard and excelled among the imperial princes during examinations, only to be publicly criticized by the father emperor for being overly competitive and lacking humility. When he saw the crown prince reward palace servants with cool tea during summer heat, earning praise for benevolence, he did the same. Yet the father emperor accused him of buying people's loyalties. When he saw the crown prince show concern for the father emperor's health, moving him with filial devotion, he too expressed concern, only to be harshly rebuked for spying on the emperor and harboring rebellious intentions, punished with 3 days of kneeling. The same actions, when done by the crown prince, earned praise. When he did them, everything was wrong. He finally understood. The father emperor's heart was biased. While disciplining him, the father emperor was also using the opportunity to warn the other princes that none should surpass the crown prince or entertain thoughts of competing for the throne. Within a few years, father emperor sent all the other princes to their fiefdoms early. Unexpectedly, he kept him behind, even allowing him to enter the court and develop his influence. Because father emperor had noticed the crown prince's weakness and benevolence, he wanted him to be the whetstone for the crown prince. He was merely a test prepared by the emperor to temper the crown prince. Zhu Rong looked at Rong's coffin and memorial tablet, spread his arms and laughed loudly. Now, this whetstone has broken the sword he so carefully nurtured. I wonder if father emperor is satisfied. He stopped laughing, his gaze turning cold as he looked at me, leaning down to pinch my chin. Xinhua, you've been very disobedient. How dare you carry his child? I lifted my eyes, following his movement, meeting the malice in his gaze without flinching. Your Highness, I fell in love with him. Zhu Rong was stunned for a moment, first letting out 2 incredulous laughs, then grabbed my neck. How dare you fall in love with him? How could you fall in love with him? Have you forgotten how your family died? Forgotten how you helped me push him step by step into a corner? I looked at him calmly. Death settles all debts. He and I are even now. Rongju sneered coldly. Do you think I would allow you to bear this child? I simply replied, now that the Eastern Palace is filled with His Majesty's people everywhere, if your Highness forces me, I wouldn't mind letting His Majesty know everything I've done for you. At worst, it would be mutual destruction. Rongju's hand around my neck suddenly tightened, as if wanting to strangle me right then. Yet, he restrained himself. I knew he was on the verge of fury. He had always seen me as something in his palm to manipulate and use at will. He wanted to control me through love, never expecting that one day love would be the reason I slipped from his grasp. He found it absurd, unbelievable. He was furious, unwilling to accept it. But in the end, he released his grip, his face returning to its impassive state, even bearing a faint smile. Xinhua, you may keep this child. Once I ascend the throne, even Father Emperor won't be able to stop me. You will ultimately be mine. Rong's death dealt too heavy a blow to the emperor. After dealing with the Zhou clan, he suddenly fell, gravely ill. Though Zhu Rong was long delayed in being named the crown prince, the emperor's failing health forced him to entrust most state affairs into Zhu Rong's hands. With the support of the Duke of Jinghua now behind him, Grand Tutor Zhou had fallen, and the court officials who once wavered had all pledged their allegiance to Zhu Rong. The civil and military officials at court were all his allies. The other princes, powerless and confined to their fiefs, posed no threat. Whether he held the title of heir apparent or not mattered little. I paid no mind to the turmoil outside, focusing solely on nurturing my pregnancy in the Eastern Palace. After Yin Rong's body had lain in state for 6 months and was buried, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The emperor named him Jingzhou Rong, remarking that being born into the royal family without a claim to power wasn't so bad. He could live freely, going with the flow as a carefree soul. On the day of little Jingzhou's full moon banquet, Mingzhu Yin pulled me aside after the feast to speak privately. The number of women in your highness's residence keeps growing, and your visits to me have become much fewer. If that day comes, her voice softened with complaint, when the time comes and he has 3,000 beauties in his harem, how should I handle it? I knew that to win over court officials, Zhu Rong had taken several ministers' daughters into his household. He didn't take Fu Yin. With the emperor gravely ill and him acting as regent, his power was at its peak. He no longer needed Fu Yin to kill for him. I guess that in the fantasy she'd woven for herself. Once Zhu Rong achieved his great ambition, he would surely take her as his consort. After all, for him, she had forsaken everything, offering her body and soul. Yet Zhu Rong had even accepted 2 sisters from the Shadow Guard, but only made Fu Yin a chief palace maid. Day after day, she served by his side. Night after night, she knelt outside his bedchamber, listening to his intimate moments and shared passions with other women. He still had such a twisted sense of humor. Before I gave birth, Fu Yin came to see me once. She seemed somewhat disoriented, her vacant gaze falling on my swollen belly before she suddenly let out a cold laugh. It doesn't matter that he didn't want me. At least he didn't want you either. I raised my left hand to sip tea, revealing a string of exceptionally large and luminous night pearls adorning my wrist. Fu Yin's expression instantly changed. These were treasures that even Mingzhu Yin, the first consort, had requested from Zhu Rong but never received. Yet, here they were with me. I had deliberately worn them to show her. Fu Yin left, her face pale. A woman blinded by love is fragile and easily broken. Mingzhu Yin gripped my hand tightly, her eyes filled with urgency. The crown prince severed ties with Grand Tutor Zhou for your sake, and to ensure a lifetime of honor for you and your child. He took his own life before his majesty could depose him. How did you make him so devoted to you, even to the point of dying for you? Even your highness. Toward you, another summer arrived, and the gardenia filled courtyard carried a faint, hidden scent of a unique jasmine powder. Though Fu Yin had killed Shadow 7 all these years, she still used the jasmine powder he had specially blended for her. I deliberately paused and thought for a moment before saying to Mingzhu Yin, "Did you know there exists a love hex in this world? If you nourish it with your blood for 49 days, implant the mother hex into your body, then use the hair of your beloved to create a hex incense as a lure. The child hex will crawl into their body on its own. Once the mother and child hexes are implanted, from then on, his eyes will see no one but you." When little Jingzhou was 3 months old, I avoided Zhu Rong's watchful eyes and quietly sent him away from the capital. The next day, Yanqing Song, the scholar from the Southlands who had initially beaten the drum of grievances to accuse Grand Tutor Zhou, suddenly proclaimed loudly at the bustling entrance of the Imperial Academy that the second prince, Zhu Rong, was the true mastermind behind the Southlands flood disaster. He claimed that, in his bid for the crown prince's position, Zhu Rong had taken advantage of the spring and summer storms to send people to blow up several river embankments in the Southlands, causing devastating floods and immense suffering among the people. While the Zhou family took the blame, he publicly scattered copied evidence, declaring that he too had been deceived and used by Zhu Rong, unaware of the full picture. While the Zhou family's crimes in the Southlands were indeed condemnable, Zhu Rong's act of plunging countless common people into despair for the sake of seizing the throne was utterly unforgivable. The gravely ill emperor, upon learning of this in the palace, was so enraged that he vomited blood on the spot. The death of Yin Rong remained an unhealed wound in his heart. He knew Yin Rong had died solely to protect me and Jingzhou's mother and child. He had died burdened by the guilt in his own heart. The emperor couldn't help but wonder, if Yin Rong had known the floods in the Southlands weren't his fault, would the weight of his sins have been lighter? Would he then have chosen not to take his own life? Yet now, with Zhu Rong's power grown immense, even as Yanqing Song's incident erupted unexpectedly, Zhu Rong still managed to strike first when he saw the situation turning against him. The capital garrison under the Duke of Jinggua's command swiftly seized control of the capital, while the Imperial Guard, long bribed by Zhu Rong to secure their loyalty, took over the Imperial Palace. He then had Yanqing Song imprisoned and tortured, forcing him to confess to being instigated by others to frame Zhu Rong. Overnight, the imperial city was swept by turbulent winds and shifting skies, with everyone in the capital living in fear. Startled by the slightest sound, the emperor, confined to his quarters by Zhu Rong, cursed him as a traitorous son, vowing never to let him have his way. Zhu Rong stood with his hands behind his back, smiling as he looked at him. "Father Emperor, I have ordered all your other sons to be executed. Though I am not your favorite son, I am your last remaining one. You have no choice." He paused, suddenly remembering something. I almost forgot there is one more. I will send someone to the Eastern Palace to kill that little bastard." The emperor, shocked and enraged, stared wide-eyed, unable to catch his breath, and passed away, watching his father die with eyes wide open. Zhu Rong felt a surge of vengeful satisfaction. He laughed heartily as he left the emperor's bedchamber and strode toward the Golden Throne Hall. He knew he should summon officials to the imperial study to draft the succession edict, arrange for the emperor's body to be prepared, and announce the news of the great emperor's demise. But he wanted first to sit on the supreme throne he had long dreamed of. He entered the Golden Throne Hall, ascended the imperial steps step by step toward the dragon throne he had admired for years, and sat down. After years of plotting, he had finally achieved his desire. How exhilarating it was. Even the incense freshly lit in the hall seemed to smell more fragrant than usual. As the incense in the burner burned out, he noticed Fu Yin standing quietly by his side, her gaze upon him strangely intense. Her eyes held greed, a sinister gleam, and a hint of concealed madness. She looked at him, her voice tinged with probing. "Your Highness, do you love me?" Zhu Rong's face turned cold as he was about to order her away, but then he sensed something amiss in his body. Clutching his chest, he weakly leaned against the golden dragon, carved armrest, glaring at Fu Yin in shock and fury. "What have you done to me?" Fu Yin gazed at his face with infatuation, moving closer to him. "Is your Highness's heart aching for me? It's all right. Everything I did for your Highness was of my own will. I always knew your Highness must love me, and from now on, you'll love only me." Frowning deeply, Zhu Rong shouted sharply, "She's gone mad. Kill her." Hidden guards emerged from the shadows, intercepting Fu Yin's advance toward Zhu Rong. Fu Yin looked bewildered at the shadow guards surrounding her, then turned to Zhu Rong, who wore an expression of disgust. "Your Highness, after all I've done, why do you still not love me? You should love me." Zhu Rong ordered mercilessly, "Kill her." When I entered the Golden Throne Hall, I saw devastation everywhere. Zhu Rong's shadow guards all lay dead at Fu Yin's hands. She was the blade Zhu Rong had personally honed, his proudest masterpiece. Even after a fierce battle, covered in wounds and missing an arm, she stubbornly stood her ground, sword in hand, advancing step by step toward Zhu Rong while calling out with deep affection, "Your Highness." I walked over and thrust my sword through Fu Yin's back. As she fell, she murmured with bitter reluctance, "Your Highness, why don't you love me? You should love me." Zhu Rong leaned on the cold armrest of the dragon throne, not even glancing at Fu Yin's corpse, his gloomy gaze fixed solely on me. As clever as he is, he understood everything the moment he saw me. "Xinu, was it you? Why, I smiled without saying a word, just as he had done back then, placing a piece of candy and a dagger before him, letting him make the choice. Ju Rong was taken aback, raising his phoenix eyes to glare at me with a sinister expression. When did you find out? I continued to smile. I've always known. After enduring for so many years, pretending for so long, I could finally stand above Ju Rong, toying with him just as he had once fooled me. I had long said that Fu Yin would be the blade of my revenge. Ju Rong was too arrogant. He trampled on Fu Yin's feelings without restraint, yet never guarded against her. He didn't know that a woman driven mad by love would be the greatest vulnerability by his side. With just a little guidance, Fu Yin did exactly as I wished, poisoning Ju Rong with a curse. Now, the venom courses through his entire body, leaving him without even the strength to stand. He looked at me, his face unusually displaying a mix of emotions: shock, anger, resentment, and confusion, as he gritted his teeth and asked me. The Duke of Jingua had long since dispatched troops to surround the Eastern Palace, and the entire Imperial Palace was under the control of the Imperial Guards. How did you get in? It was me, outside the Golden Throne Hall. Mingzhu Yin, adorned in lavish attire and a head full of jewels, slowly walked in. By her side were Yanqing Song, pushing a wheelchair while covered in wounds, and Feng Qin, seated in the wheelchair. The three of them stood together, their expressions cold as they stared at Ju Rong. Feng Qin said, "Your Highness remains as arrogant as ever, but money can move even the gods. If your Highness can bribe the Imperial Guards, so can I. The Imperial Palace is no longer under your control." Ju Rong narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at the three people before him with confusion. One was the puppet he used to control the Qin family. One was the tool he used to obtain the Duke of Jingua's military power. And one was the pawn he selected to expose the Zhou clan. Before today, these three were insignificant to him. He couldn't understand why they had betrayed him, especially Mingzhu Yin, who was his wife. With just one more step forward, she could have become the empress who would rule over the entire realm. Yin Mingzhu took out from her bosom a cord so filthy, its original color was indiscernible. Its grime mingled with old bloodstains. So aged it had begun to fray. She handled it with utmost care. "Your Highness, in truth I am not Yin Mingzhu. My name is Minner. Once a beggar girl in the Southland's capital, Arya was the true Yin Mingzhu. She was too young when she went missing, unable to even recall her own name. Later, drifting to the Southlands, an old woman found her. The old woman had a daughter named Aya who died young, so she called her Arya. After the old woman passed, she became a beggar, meeting meeting us. She always knew she had parents who cherished her deeply, but she couldn't find her way home. When she was tortured to death in the brothel, she still couldn't remember she had such a beautiful name, Yin Mingzhu. Her parents treasured her like jade, like a precious pearl. If Rongju hadn't ordered Zhou to sell us, perhaps one day she could have returned to the Duke of Jingua and his wife. Rongju caused the tragic death of the Duke of Jingua's only daughter, sealing his fate never to become Rongju's ally from the start. Yet the crown prince is weak. If Rong Yin were to ascend the throne, the Duke of Jingua would forever remain subordinate to Grand Tutor Zhou, making him naturally inclined to cooperate with me. Many years ago, in that staged rescue Rongju orchestrated with his twisted sense of amusement, a small, insignificant girl set the stage for his downfall today. Mingzhu Yin clutched the tassel tightly, pressing it to her heart, and laughed through tears as she looked at Rongju. When we each took a turn stabbing Zhou to death, he still remembered Arya, remembered how he had wronged her. At least in his final moments, he showed remorse. But your Highness surely doesn't remember us anymore, do you? For the first time, a look of confusion crossed Rongju's face. After being sold off by Zhou back then, Guzi, being clever, escaped halfway to the labor camp and wandered as a beggar all the way to the capital, where I found him. Later, I sent him back to the Southlands to search for the others. But in the end, he only found Xiaoniu and Minner. When we found Minner, she had been tortured beyond recognition in the brothel. While laboring in the bitter kiln, Xiao Niu had his legs crushed by a massive rock. When Guzi found him, he had been discarded in the mass burial ground, left to die. Later, Xiao Niu became Feng Qin. I used Xian Qin's account books to help him covertly bypass Zhu Rong's subordinates and completely take control of the Qin family. Min'er became Ming Zhu Yin. I gave her the knot cord that Arya had clutched in her hand before dying, helping her gain the trust of the Duke of Zhenghua and his wife. Guzi changed his name to Yanqing Song, posing as a scholar from the Southlands who harbored deep hatred for the Zhou clan, catching Zhu Rong's attention. Zhu Rong probably never imagined that the few little beggars from the dilapidated temple in the Southlands, whom he had dismissed and thought he could crush at will, would one day stand here together, seeking revenge against him, just as when he killed my entire family, but spare my life. So full of arrogance, he said, "A little girl can't stir up any waves. Keeping her alive will be more amusing than killing her." He surely never thought that one day. The little girl he saw as a plaything to manipulate at will would also force him to choose between candy and a dagger. This boy is full of defiance. He must not be spared. I picked up that dagger and toyed with it. Now that all your allies are mine, I not only want your life, but I also want all your schemes to flow eastward in vain, serving as my wedding dress. I want you to see this position within your grasp, yet forever out of reach. I want you to die with eyes wide open, with success slipping away and the tide turning against him. Zhu Rong leaned back on the golden dragon, carved throne, laughing heartily at me, almost to the point of tears. "Well done, Xinhua. You've truly learned well." I raised my hand and slit his throat with a single stroke. The second prince, Zhu Rong, committed treason through patricide and kinslaying, and was executed within the palace. On the same day, the Duke of Zhenghua led the civil and military officials in proclaiming the eldest imperial grandson, Jingzhou Rong, as the new emperor, honoring his birth mother, Lady Lu, as the Empress Dowager. With the new emperor being young, the Empress Dowager, Lu, ruled as regent. The numerous crimes committed by Zhu Rong were finally revealed to the world, including the horrifying massacre of my family. History is written by the victors. As the world condemned Zhu Rong, Yin Rong's reputation, tarnished by the Zhou clan, gradually faded and reversed, and he once again became the noble and virtuous crown prince in people's eyes. He had to remain that noble and virtuous crown prince to build momentum for Jingzhou and me. When I donned the phoenix crown and ceremonial robes, holding the infant emperor in swaddling clothes as I ascended the dragon throne, the bloodstains left by Zhu Rong had long been washed clean. Listening to the thunderous, "Long live the emperor," cries beneath me, I looked down upon the civil and military officials, not missing the looks in their eyes. Contemptuous, mocking, exactly like the way Zhu Rong and many other men had looked at me before. They probably thought a woman and a young child would ultimately be manipulated and fooled by them. It didn't matter. I had patience. Many things from Xian Qin's account book were finally going to serve their true purpose.